series today, and the next one on your resume, then there's one on interviewing, LinkedIn, and networking. These are all designed to give you a competitive edge, because people are landing, and we're posting Handshake, we're posting jobs. Our employee relations people are doing a great job. We're posting hundreds of jobs a week. Unfortunately, for some of you who are experienced alumni, those aren't going to be that helpful, but I speak to people individually all the time, and they are landing. Sometimes they're just not doing, they're missing something as part of their job search. So hopefully I'm going to, provide you with some information that will help you. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so this is all designed for how you stand out. It's a crowded employment marketplace, and so you have to stand out from the crowd. And today's session is really going to be the foundation of that, and that's about your personal brand. I was, Phil didn't say my background, but what I think is most helpful to people is that in addition to being a counselor and a coach, I was a recruiter for 2 big Fortune 500 companies. So I always look at employment from the other side of the desk, how the employer is looking at it. And so I try to relay that onto you so that it will help you in your search. So you really can't stand out unless you know what you stand for, because job searching is really a sales campaign. And in any sales campaign, I mean, the product is you. Before you went out and sold it in terms of a resume or speaking to someone, you'd want to make an assessment and find out what you're selling. So the agenda today is, what is personal branding? What's the benefits of a personal brand? Incorporating your brand into your job search, how to grow and manage your brand, how to avoid the gap during this COVID period that we're in, and if you're working now, what steps to take. I would appreciate if you would save your questions for the end. This is kind of chock full of information, and so I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, but if you could save them, just put them, jot them down and save them to the end. We'll take them then. So you're all familiar with brands, but when we think of brands, we think of products, we think of companies. Like if I said Nike, I'm not going to start with the chat because we have too much, but Nike, people think of athleticism. Apple, you see people standing online every time there's a new Apple product around the block, because it's that whole new cutting edge design. Starbucks, I always laugh that Starbucks is a brand, you know what you're getting when you get a double latte, but also when you're in the city and you can't find a bathroom, Starbucks is a great place to know that they have restrooms. So anyway, but each company is a brand, and you all are very familiar with these brands. You know what you're getting. So personal branding, so I've got to move this box so I can read it. Personal branding is a process by which we market ourselves to others and how others perceive us. It's a whole brand new world. You're branded, branded, branded. We're CEOs of our own company. So Tom Peters, who's a big leadership guru, coined that personal branding back in the 50s. So you are your own brand. So it's just like companies cultivate their brand. You want to be able to know what your brand is when you go out into the workforce and tell it to other people. So the 4 steps to personal branding are knowing your unique value proposition, what's special about you, in other words, defining your target, who's your audience, who are you going to pitch to, right? Sharing your brand in every form of communication, and continuously building, managing, and protecting your brand, just like companies protect their brand. And I just heard something about Biden was speaking to a group of people, and they say, well, that's the Biden brand. So he's cultivating his brand, which is about integrity, communication, and being transparent. So your unique value proposition comes about with composed of a number of things. One is your skills. So these are what you possess. Some are hard skills. I'm going to elaborate on them later, but skills that maybe relate to your particular function. So these could be maybe Google Analytics or doing Excel, or if you're a project manager, getting that license, that you're knowing those kinds of skills. Also, it's your values. You should know, even though you might not be able to get the exact job you want to know what your values are. I was working with a fellow from Regal Films, the movie theater chain, who had been there about 15 years. He was a PACE alum. And now the next step was for him to be a regional manager. But that meant traveling a lot. And now since COVID, he really reevaluated that and thought that he might, look elsewhere outside. I just spoke to a woman, my last call before I got on this call was a woman who was an attorney, hated where she worked, but she's all about green, green and green space and clean living, and she does volunteer work. Well, we decided that that she's going to look there for work in terms of companies or not-for-profits that value that, because she'd have a competitive edge because she's doing a lot of volunteer work in that, and that's her passion. And then again, your interests. So if you're in a quandary about where to look for work, if the best thing are people who can combine their interest, their avocation with their vocation. And a client that stands out is someone who loved biking. He loves everything about biking. He was in a different kind of job. And then he decided to open up a bicycle repair shop. And now during COVID, been in the work world for a long time. Sometimes you have accomplishments and you might not remember what they are because it happened 10 years ago. But just because something happened 10 years ago doesn't mean that that's not important, because telling your accomplishments, making an inventory of your accomplishments is one of the most important things you can do before you start a job search. First of all, it'll make you feel more confident, because it's a whole thing of I am sold myself. If you're not confident in yourself as a candidate, you're not going to be able to influence, you're not going to be able to convince a recruiter that they should hire you, because they have something at stake too. So it's the power of knowing what these accomplishments are and telling a little story. I always say I see so many people or speak to so many people a day, and I might not remember your responsibilities, because responsibilities are kind of boring, and they don't, everyone's are, and they don't really say, that's just like a job description, what you brought to the table. But if you tell me a little story, that makes you memorable. For instance, there's a fellow who came, and I remember he was an event planner for a financial company, and he was just telling it to me in a very lackluster way. He was, listing off his responsibilities. And I said, well, can you think back to any accomplishments, to times where you did something that you were really proud? And he said, well, a number of years ago, I organized this whole event for Superstorm Sandy to raise money. And I had to get the venue and the vendors and the music and all these components. And he said it was a terrific event and he was so excited about it. Now, I won't remember him that much for the other things he told me about, but here's somebody who can get it done. Here's somebody who can coordinate all the different pieces of an event. And that will stand out in my mind. So how do you do that? Here's the exercise to do it. Go back over your jobs and say, think of think of a specific time in your last job where you can say, I did a good job and I enjoyed it. And go back to all your jobs, or if it's not through a job that you can find these accomplishments, maybe it's through your personal life or your vocation, your avocation. These things do not have to be, I solved climate change or I won the Pulitzer Prize. They have to be just something for you where you're proud of it and you enjoyed it, because it's better to use a motivated accomplishment. Then think of 6 or 7 of these stories and see, is there a pattern? In each of these stories, were you the person who was the one who organized things? Or were you somebody who brought the best ideas to the table? Or were you someone that could be counted on? You were responsible or strategic? Any of these things will build a case that you can tell an employer, this is your brand. Wherever you go, this is your brand. Because as an employer, the only way I know how you're going to perform for me in the future is to look back and see what you did in the past. And these are the stories that can confirm that. You know, just to say I have good ideas means nothing unless you can back it up. And backing it up with a story is the most important thing. So look for these patterns. And then after you do that, you can examine these stories for skills. So when you were doing that accomplishment, what skills were you using? That's another way of looking at, going from the event back into the skills. You can also just ask a friend or somebody who knows you well, or a partner, when you think of me, or especially a work partner, what are 3 adjectives? How would you describe me in 3 words? And sometimes they'll think of things that, you're so close to your own talents that sometimes you don't know what these are. So I really encourage you to make an inventory of what these are. You're going to need them to write your resume, an effective resume, and you're going to need them for interviews. Because when they say, tell me about a time, you're going to have that on your fingertips. You're not going to be hemming and hawing. Okay. So after we have your accomplishments, okay, you know who you are, you know your skills, you know what you're bringing to the party, you know your value proposition. The next thing you have to do is know who your target is. Who are you pitching to? Okay, so a target is an industry, a function, and a geographic area. So any of these things, if you change any of these things, different companies should fall out once you know your industry, your function, and your geographic area. So the woman I was just talking to, she's an attorney, that's her function. Her industry right now is insurance, and her geographic area happens to be Boston. But she's now thinking she really doesn't mind being an attorney, but she really is excited about, climate change. So her industry, she wants to change her industry. So therefore, what we were working on is, where are those jobs? For her, it was consulting companies. It was for not-for-profit companies. So you want to know what those are. Who are you pitching to? Because if you are in one target, like I have had many careers, if I'm looking for a job as a coach versus a recruiter, there's going to be different. I'm going to emphasize different things in my background. I'm going to talk about different accomplishments for coaching than I would be in terms of being a recruiter. And some of you have targets that are very far afield. So you need to know what those are. So think about outside the box. What will the new normal need? If you're not unemployed now, you don't want to go to sell buggy whips when the car is being invented, right? You want to try to do something that's, a lot of people who are in entertainment are now looking at streaming. Try to reinvent yourself, or look at a target that's growing, not that's shrinking. Like publishing, there were so many people that I dealt with that were coming out of publishing because that's just a shrinking industry. Unless you know digital, you're really, it's not a great industry to pursue. Certainly people will still getting jobs. If your heart is set on that, then do it. Because some people will be getting hired, but it's not the greatest, it's not a growth industry. So you need to know who you're pitching to. So you want to define that as the person who does not know where they want to go, there is no favorable wind. So just shooting in the dark is not the way to find a job. Once you identify your target, if you want to confirm that this is the right thing, you want to conduct some informational interviews and do some online research, because sometimes you think something is the right for you, but until you start talking to people and exploring a little, you realize that's not really it. Like I have a client who's just really is a terrible writer, and she was pursuing an industry and she didn't realize how much writing there was in that industry. So it's not really, wasn't really a good use of her time to put a lot of time and energy behind it. And then each target has a different keyword. Keyword is a skill. So you can't be all things to all people. When we talk about resumes in the next session, I'm going to spend a lot of time on keywords, because if you don't have the right keyword, you're not going to be able to pass an applicant tracking system, and you're not going to be able to pass a recruiter, even humanize. So each target has different keywords, and you have to be specific. So it's okay to have a plan A and a plan B. Like, you know, your plan A can be one thing and your plan B can be another, but you need to approach them one at a time. Because if you're trying to be all things to all people, your resume gets watered down and they will toss your resume out or your application out in favor of someone who's more focused. So this is, I just threw this in last minute, so sorry for the font and everything, but the best job search techniques is make a list of your target companies, have that in front of you every day, because check these companies' websites for openings. That's much more current than going on regular, general job boards. The websites are keep their applications more current. And then the main question is, how will you network into these companies, right? Because that 80% of people get jobs by networking. And it always amazes me that people spend 80% of their time looking online, because it seems like it's the easiest and it's alluring, but it's the most reactive. And it's people do it for a year and a half. They come to me and they say, I haven't gotten any responses. I'm just, it's just nobody, I don't hear back from anybody. It's a big waste of your time in most cases. So networking is the best, and through PACE alumni on LinkedIn is one of the ways to do that. We'll talk about that in further sessions. So, but that's the best way to, so when I see someone who's had a fantastic resume, it's usually the way they're searching is what's derailing them. That's what's happening to them. And if we switch that up, they get a lot more results. So once you have so now you know your value proposition and you know your target, who you're pitching to, you want to develop your pitch. You want to develop how you're going to succinctly tell that employer what your value proposition is. Okay, so you want to be able to communicate your brand. The conventional elevator pitch, I'm sure you've heard of an elevator pitch. That's a very concise time. That you can, if you found your dream employer on an elevator with you, now they'd have a mask on, but in other days, and you recognize them, you would try to, between the first and the 11th floor, tell your pitch. So the standard pitch would be, I'm a graduate of Pace University in Business Administration. Currently, I'm at XYZ company as a business analyst. It's sort of just telling what you are. Not that impressive, it's information. A branded elevator pitch conveys your value to the employer. So throughout my career, I've turned data into actionable insights that drove substantial new revenue. So you want to give a little more value to what makes you special. There's lots of business analysts running around there, but what is your brand? You're communicating your brand. And once you do that, you're not going to always, in this day and age, have that chance on an elevator, but that's why your top part of your resume is so important. This is the profile section. We'll be talking about that at length in the next month. But I just want to show it to you now that if you just wrote a straight chronological resume with your current job and then, going back in time, That would be okay if you want to do the same thing going forward. But if you want to make any change or anything like that, because you're typecast by your last job. So for this woman, for instance, I just spoke to, if she didn't want to be a lawyer in the insurance industry, that's what she's going to be typecast as. So being able to put a profile or a little summary about yourself, particularly with keywords, so that, it's a great way to use those keywords that I talked about in terms of that gets you through this initial process to get you an interview. You want to keep it specific. As I said, you might have, if you have two different targets, it would be specific to that target. And it highlights your strengths and top qualities for the job. Many people say, well, I don't need this because I'm going to put this in a cover letter. But guess what? A lot of people don't read cover letters, as shocking as that is. And B, you can't always be assured that your cover letter is going to travel with your resume. So I really truly believe as a recruiter in a profile. You want to also have your brand in your LinkedIn, profile. This top line here, communications, digital marketer, the line before, I'm not, we'll do a whole LinkedIn session for you, but the line underneath your name in your LinkedIn is your most important real estate on LinkedIn. You shouldn't default, if you don't put anything in, it's going to default to where you're working now or the fact that you're not working. So you want to have those keywords in your LinkedIn profile. Very important. You have 120 characters to do that. So you want to manage and protect your brand, right? You want to have brand consistency in your resume, in your LinkedIn profile, in your elevator pitch, your interview, your networking, all throughout your campaign is your brand, what you stand for, what makes you special. Let me just go back here for a second. I want to talk to you about, I deal with a lot of experienced alum, and some people have been out of the job market for a while. And they always ask me, Marilyn, is it true that there's, ageism out there, prejudice against being older? Well, guess what? I'd lie to you if I said there wasn't. Some industries more than others. Education, luckily, is not one of them. If you're a professor, but if you're a brand manager for Pepsi, that's a pretty, if you're not 30, that's a tough. I think they put the people with gray hair in the closet. But there's lots of while ageism is real, there are ways to get around that, and that's your brand. Don't brand yourself by being older if that's going to hurt you. So in other words, the only thing people do is take off when they graduate from college. Okay, you can do that. Someone knows you're older. That's why you hid it. But there's more things than that. First of all, your email. If it's AOL, if it's at AOL.com, I already know it's an older person. So you might want to think about changing that. The other thing is, it used to be great to put 25 plus years of experience in something, but it will hurt you now. So you could put 10, over 10 years of experience. I wouldn't go further than that because a lot of these people who are looking at your resume and thinking about hiring you were in grammar school 10 years ago. I mean, you want to make sure you don't need more than that experience. At some point, it hurts you. And there's ways to get around it. If you really have great experience over 10 years, you want to mention it. There's ways to do that. Just trying to think of other things that will brand you, but you don't have to go back that far in time because, and in preparing for a resume, your interview, you want to make sure you have a LinkedIn on your resume because that shows that you're current, that you know about LinkedIn. And you want to investigate, and during an interview, you want to investigate the company culture and then talk about how you could be relevant to that company culture. And last thing I'm going to mention is how you dress, even if it's on a Zoom call. You want to, if it's a young company and their dress is informal, you don't want to show up with a three-piece. It can't be a suit, even if it's your jacket and tie for the interview. So there's some things that will make you, less you know, play into their fears of what an older person are. And, you know, you can more talk about how it gives people a competitive edge because you have experience. And to me, experience um, trumps age or even intelligence a lot. So you want to, when you start this, you want to manage your digital message. So Google yourself. You don't want something on there if you can at all, you know, get rid of things that are not giving a good impression of yourself. Get rid of it. Make sure what other people say. Clean up your digital dirt. So a lot of people are using the social media. They don't realize that recruiters are looking at it. I have, you know, some 30s, 40s, just people that are always at parties and things like that. They always have a drink in their hand. You might want to clean that up and take some of those off because recruiters do look at it. One of my favorite stories is one of my colleagues at Pace, who is one of the best, you know, she taught interviewing skills. She bought a co-op in Manhattan for cash, so there was no problem with financing. The last piece of this whole process was that she was going to interview for the condo board. So that's like piece of cake to her. She's an interview expert. So when she came in the next day, I said, Nancy, how'd it go? You know, congratulations. I didn't even think there might be a problem. She said, you wouldn't believe this. They turned me down. I said, how could that be? How could you be turned down? And she said, they went on Facebook, my Facebook account. They saw that I had kids that were in college and that were in fraternities. And this was like an old guard board of directors there. And they just extrapolated the fact that her son would be bringing his college frat mates to her apartment and using their pool and whatever amenities they had. And they turned her down. So it's so odd, but you know, you need to manage that and think about how an employer is looking at you. Evolving your brand. You want to enhance or add skills that employers need, but you do not have. So hard skills, specific teachable abilities that can be defined in measures, like Excel, quantitative analysis, know how to work remotely on Zoom, Blackboard Ultra. These are things that you need to know now in this world. So if you're missing something, like I spoke to somebody 2 days ago who was missing, he wanted to be a project manager, and he kept coming up against the block that he didn't have his PMP certificate. And every job he got almost there, and then he didn't have it. So what does it tell him? He had to get it. You can get it online. I mean, it's a hard exam, as I've been told. But if that's the thing that's going to prevent you from having a career, then you have to think about how to overcome that by getting it if you can. HR people who want someone who's breaking into the HR field. She didn't really have any work experience there, but she could get her HR credentials through SHRM online and put that whatever you get, whatever the acronym is, right after her name, so she looks like an HR professional. Soft skills. These are less harder to quantify skills, being a team player, being flexible, having confidence, multitasking. These really need to be backed up by those accomplishment stories, right? Everyone says they're a team player. Most people say they can multitask, but you have to show how you did. If you worked and went to school, a lot of people take just jobs to make money that aren't professional, but they're carrying a full load of credits at school. I think that's very commendable, and it shows that you can multitask. So jobscan.co is a terrific thing. Once you have your branded resume, you think, okay, I've got the resume that's right for this target, right? And let's say you have a job you really want to apply for. Test it out. You can go into something called jobscan.co. It's not a typo. It's not com. It's co. It's a free tool, and it has you cut and paste your resume on one side, cut and paste a job description on the other, and then it will tell you in a few seconds percent match, which is kind of okay to know. But the real thing it will say is the job said let's say multitask 3 times, you didn't have that on your resume. You said it 0 times. So what does it tell you? It tells you if you can multitask, it says, it tells you should put that on your resume in order to get through any applicant screening process. And most medium to large companies do have those processes. So, and even recruiters will have that as when they're looking at their job spec, they'll have that on there. So jobscan.co is a terrific tool to let you see how your resume is being evaluated. So upskill yourself. So what skills can you add to be ready for this market? There's Google Garage, Google Analytics, digital marketing, Cvents. There's fundraising ones. I've just listed some here. If it's applicable to you, then you can go on Coursera, and there are ways for free or pretty much free that you can pick these up. And guess what? Put them right at the front top of your resume, because if it's a recent skill or it's a recent certification, you want that trumps, because it's recent, everything else. And it's also a thing in terms of ageism. If you show that you're learning new things and you're, constantly open to learning, because that's one of the prejudices against old people can't learn new things, so put that on top of your resume to combat that prejudice. So these are just in general top skills many employers seek. Tech savviness. I don't know if any of you, we were sharing this in the beginning before we formally started this meeting, that this week during the impeachment trials, one of the senators came on, giving his testimony on Zoom, and he was upside down, which I kind of related to. And he said he couldn't write himself, so the whole time he was giving his testimony upside down. So some degree of tech savviness is important to show. A strong work ethic, being able to be adaptable, certainly in these times. Adaptability and resilience are so important. Creativity and ingenuity, flexibility, and taking initiative. So if you have these things and you can show them in your profile or talk about them as weave them into your resume or, during your interviewing, that's going to be, with little stories that we talked about, that's going to be all to your favor. Now, during COVID, if you're not working, try to avoid the gap. You don't want to have that gap in your resume, even though it's a little bit more allowable now than in other times. You still want to be doing something. So obtain online certifications. If real estate is your thing, maybe you can get a real estate license. My daughter just did that. Insurance certification. Certainly learn all the Microsoft things that you can. There's Bloomberg Market, project management certification, Google Analytics. These are the most popular ones. There might be other ones that you think of. They can't hurt you to, at least if someone says, well, what have you been doing in this time? You're showing that you're busy, that you're trying to be productive, that you're doing the best you can. Okay. Additional things, practice virtual interviewing. That's probably how you're going to interview in the next couple of months or thereafter. So you can YouTube virtual interviewing. They'll tell you the do's and don'ts. I'm going to be talking about that in a couple of months about interviewing. Build up your network. So important to, be ready to get that network. That's why if you get that list of companies, you can't, any career counselor will tell you the bigger your network, the less time you're going to have in the job market. It's who you know. So build up your network. Go on LinkedIn, see who knows who, get an Excel spreadsheet of people that you know. Get all your job search documents ready, your resume, your LinkedIn profile. And one last thing, which I had to put in here. It might sound silly, but do not reject an offer until you receive one. So what do I mean by that? There are so many people who look at job posts and say, nah, they look at it and they look right at the salary, even though it might be a company that they think is a terrific company that they like to work for, and the job looks great, something that's right up there, you know, in their wheelhouse, they'll reject it before they even do anything, even apply, because of the salary. So I'm saying, especially during this time, don't do that. You never know. If you're working with a search firm, you're going to have to say your salary right off. They're going to reject you because they're working for the company. So you can't do anything about that. But if you're approaching the company, you really, there's ways, you know, sometimes if you can build the job, if you can defer the salary argument and build the job, that's the first thing you do, is grow the job so that you hear more about what they're talking about. And now the job is not from A to D, but it's from A. There's more things that that you could put in because you have more skills to add to the bar. Then when you go to when they give you the offer, you can negotiate then, because you're not talking about the original job. You're talking about a new job that's a bigger job because it takes your skills into account. So, and also, if you don't reject the job before you go, sometimes it is a more junior job than you have, but that recruiter happens to also, know maybe they recruit for more senior level jobs too, and there's another one that they know about that's more appropriate for you. So there's ways around that. I say, you never know who you're going to meet. You can impress someone and something more appropriate comes about. Just so don't reject a job offer until you receive one. And if you're employed, take these actions. Ensure you have the email addresses and organizational information of key people you want to keep in touch with at your current company, because if they shut you down, which they could at any moment, anything can happen. I've had so many clients from EY, you'd never think, this last couple of weeks, because they're laying off people. So get your email addresses off their server, because you're going to need those and you won't have access to it. Ensure any personal files you have at work are backed up. Start building your career advancing network of relationships today, both inside and outside your organization. Get your job search marketing materials ready that we talked about in great shape, your resume and LinkedIn profile. And prepare yourself to negotiate severance in advance if you are taking a job like outplacement, which is career services, which some companies, but not all, will give you, but you can sometimes negotiate that at the beginning. No one wants to talk about, it's like a prenup. No one wants to talk about when you're going for a job, when everyone's in their honeymoon stage, what could happen if the job doesn't work out. But this is business, so talking about your severance is important, and your outplacement services. So in summary, continually identify, build, maintain, and enhance your brand. Update your elevator pitch, your resume, and your LinkedIn profile. Add to your network. Avoid the gap. Use this time that you have to build skills. And always be authentic, consistent, unique, and visible. So that's what I have to say today. Let me stop sharing. Back. Okay. So I'm sure some of you have questions. If you want to put that in the chat box, my colleague here, Phil, will.
Yeah, we have Karen. Karen, if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
I have sort of a double whammy of ageism and being unemployed for actually longer than the COVID year, because I had a car accident the year before. I have been doing sort of odd and ends things for friends, like doing stuff with their websites and whatnot. I'm not a designer or anything, and it's not the kind of job that I want, but it's kept me busy. Would that work with branding, even though it's not related to what I am doing, that I
Okay.
can at
What
least
what is your
say.
what is your target? What are you looking to do?
Employee communications.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's all how you spin something. So designing websites or whatever, helping with websites is a form of communications. So if you talk about it that way, that's how I'm going to see you as an employer. Secondly, the fact that you know technology in terms of combating the ageism thing, that's the number one ageism, falsehood in many cases, is that you're scared of technology. So the fact that you did that, you designed, it doesn't matter who it's for or how much you made or anything, you just put your own business and that you were designing websites and forms of employee, what did you say, what kind of communication? Employee communication. So no one's going to check what kind of communication. No one's going to say, can I see those websites? But they are going to, you have to be able to talk about it. You're not lying, but to me, websites is a form of communications, whether it's employees or out to the community or whatever. So if you spin it that way and keep it recent, you're going to be able to kill those two whammies in one stone. Never heard that before, but you'll be able to combat the ageism and also fill that gap a little bit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is from Sandra.
Hi there, how are you? Thank you so much for having this today. I've tuned up my resume. I had a company here in Chicago. I'm in Chicago area, so I'm not on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So I already had a professional, very reputable group fine tune my resume, do a cover letter. I've been getting hits left and right. I'm in project management. I've been only applying for jobs that don't require a PMP because I'm not going to spend the money and time at this point in my life to get that, since I have over 15 years of experience in the market in three industries. So it's not just one industry, and I'm very proud of that. I'm finding one of the things that's very frustrating for me is that I'm finding that we go into this black hole. You do a really great job in your cover letter. You make sure that your resume ties into the qualifications and you're covering everything. But then it's the black hole. You send it and you wait and you wait. Okay. But what I'm doing is I'm just moving on. But one of the frustrating things is that I went on a second round of interviews with Savas. I'm trying to get back into education. All of my friends, my former colleagues work at Savas. It's formerly known as Pearson. It was sold off last year. Mm-hmm. And so I had an HR interview. Fantastic. Went to the second round of interviews. I had to do a 5-question task. As like a project manager, completed it. They had 2 panel interviews, and then nothing. No communication since January 15th. And I'm like, so I reached out to the HR person the last week of January. I said, I'm checking in. How are you? Just checking on the status of my application. Is there anything else I can help you? I'm still interested. Nothing for the last 3 weeks. Mm. It's sad because here I did all this work, I sent my thank yous, critique to each person. I had a 4-panel interview, and then I had the interview with the hiring manager. So a week ago Monday, I said, okay, this is the last email. So I sent an email to the hiring manager. And I still haven't heard anything from either one. And those kind of things is where I guess the frustration is that they were so genuine and very You did an awesome job on the 5 tasks thing. You answered every question. You knew
Right.
exactly what to do. Okay, if I did, then why aren't I going to the 3rd round?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
it's just frustrating.
No, I hate these stories. I hate these stories, and I'd like to, send hate mail
Right.
to all the people that do that to people like you, because I've had that happen to me in my life too. They flew me across the country, I had all kinds of stuff, and then, you go into, radio silence. So all I can say is you sound like you've got all the pieces together. Don't rely on, this was a different, at first I thought it was a matter of just looking online, but you are using your network, which is great. You've got people in that company. So rather than rely on HR, I mean, I was an HR person, stay away from those people if you can. I know you interviewed with them, but maybe you can get some intel from some of the people that you know in the company. That would be your only way to find out. And, people are rude, things come up, and it doesn't mean that that's over, because I've heard much longer. I heard a woman who 6 months later, somebody said, oh, by the way, it's between you and someone else. I don't know if these people go into hibernation or what happens. So it could happen there, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just keep going, because what happens is if you put all your eggs on that basket, which sounds like the perfect company, the perfect, situation, and that doesn't happen for any reason, no fault of your own. It could be an internal, they decide, oh, we went with someone internal, or the president's nephew wanted the job, or any kind of thing that has nothing to do with you, but it happened, or they eliminate the position. You don't want to be so deflated that it takes you a while to pick yourself up. So keep going with other things. It's a numbers game. And just keep going with your networking and getting into other companies. And, in terms of your PMP, no, you have 15 years, you don't need that. My husband is a project manager, an architect, and they wanted him to get it. And, other people didn't have it. He said, forget it. I've been doing this job. So I was just giving an example of someone who didn't have your work experience. So not to say you. So sorry about this. Hopefully get back to us and say, by the way, they woke up, their alarm clock went off, and now I have the job. I'm happy.
Yeah. What I did was I applied for a different position there, a creative project manager position. I emailed my former director. I used her as my employee referral. As I did with the first one, that's how far I got. So she said, that's a good fit for you. So we'll see. I haven't put all, it's just the frustrating thing of them not responding. They were very responsive up to after the second interview, and then poof, it was just kind of sad in that point, since I used to work at Pearson for 17 and a half years.
Wow.
So it's like, come on, guys, I know who you are. The other thing, the other question I wanted to ask you is about contract work. I'm finding more opportunities for contracting work, making more money per hour with my skill set. And it also has been helping me get my foot in the door and understanding that business. What's your thoughts?
So thank you for bringing that up. I think contract work is great, especially for people who are, have this gap now. It keeps you current. So you have things on your resume. You can make more money. A lot of people do not want to hire a full-time person because they have to give you benefits. Benefits. That's however many word that is. It's like a 4-letter word in most things. So they hire a contractor, and sometimes you can make more money. A friend of mine worked for Novartis. Finally, they offered a full-time job. She couldn't afford to take it because the contract work was much more lucrative. So contract work is a great way. There are companies that I wish I knew right now. It's at the top of my head, but there's firms that sometimes they charge a fee, sometimes not, but there's lots of remote contract work out there for people who are like, for Karen, in employee communications. If you have a skill that, can lend itself to that, I say try to find that, unless it's taking away from your full-time search. And you can't afford that because you do need the medical, you do need. So if you can't do both at once, then keep going on the full-time. But contract work will make you probably more employable. So thank you for mentioning it, Sandra. Okay.
We
Anyone
have
else?
a small discussion here in a chat about Sandra's story. It touched us so deeply. So we hope, Sandra, you join us next month, and throughout this series we can congratulate you on your hire, and you're gonna
Definitely, I'll
share
keep you
your
posted.
And then Sandra, you can employ some PACE alumni here that are here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we'll hold you to that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Anyone else?
I don't know if we do have any last questions here.
Don't be
Then,
shy.
if not, Marilyn, will you share how we can contact you, maybe to schedule a advisement
Yeah, well, my
appointment or something?
yeah, my email is mkaufman@pace.edu. I will tell you that I only work 2 days a week, so I'm very part-time. So if it takes a while, but that, just write directly to me and I'll get you, be happy to help you if you have some things that you want to take offline here.
Oh, that's very good. And having said that, we'll see you, Marilyn, and all of you, dear participants, in March 9th, Tuesday, same time, 12 noon.
Great. Okay, good luck, everybody. Stay well. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Marilyn.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.